Hi everybody, welcome back. My name is Vasil and I'm restoring this 1974 Columbia 45.
This here is the boat, currently sitting in the Coronado Bay.
In today's episode, I will be installing a depth finder on this boat. This here is it. It's the HawkEye DT2B DepthTrax. This was actually on sale on Amazon, about 27% off. They're usually right around $100. I was able to get this for just over $80 out the door. So, good time to pick up one of the depth finders if you need one for your boat. But for this, let's get started. To preface this installation, I just want to say one thing. This is not going to be a permanent location for this depth finder. Like many of you know, I'm getting ready for my maiden voyage, so I need a depth finder to be safe here in the bay. So this will be installed somewhere in the boat where it will serve its function, but that will not be its permanent location because it has to be removed in the future in order for me to properly restore the boat. Let's talk about some of the reasons I went with this specific depth finder. Number one, this depth finder is relatively inexpensive, and this being a temporary solution, that fits my needs quite well. Number two, this depth finder is able to go down to 600 feet. That is plenty of room here in the bay. And number three, it's able to offset the keel of the boat. So you can put in how large your draft is. So the draft is how deep the boat goes in the water. In this case, it's 7'4". So I can offset those settings in the depth finder and get a true measurement of how far the keel is from the bottom of the bay. I really like that feature. And then the last thing I really like about this is its ability to be mounted inside of the boat. So depth finders can be mounted on the outside or on the inside of the boat. Inside of the box, you will find a couple of things. You will find the actual depth finder gauge. The gauge is what's going to read out the depth. The depth finder gauge has a wire that's attached to it. This is where the transducer goes. It has a fuse that goes to a battery connection. Then it comes with a transducer. The transducer is what actually sends the sonar signal to the bottom so it can get an accurate measurement. This transducer can be mounted in several ways. It can be glued onto the hull, or you can use brackets to mount it. It also comes with a large spool of wire, so you can pretty much mount it on any part of the boat if your boat is appropriately sized, obviously. It also comes with a white bezel, so you can change the bezel. And it comes with a bezel cover as well. As far as the paperwork that it comes with, the instructions are not included in paper, so they went with a QR code. So you scan this and then the instructions are online. And it is extremely wavy here today, just like it has been for the last several weeks. So we're moving a lot. It also comes with, guess what? A sticker. I like that. I never use these things, so yeah. Never use these stickers. And naturally, it also comes with the mounting hardware, the brackets that you mount the transducer with, or the bezel itself. After all the components have been taken out of the packaging and you have everything lined up properly, the next thing you do is to connect everything to power. So in my case, it's going to be a 12-volt battery that I have sitting on my solar panels. It's nighttime, so it's not charging, but let's go ahead and hook up that battery. This bad boy right here is going to be my power source. So we have the wires connected. This is the negative lead, it's the black and red wire, and then the positive lead is just a single red wire. So once everything is connected, let's take a look at the display. It's showing 3 dashes, which means it has no signal. Normally on a boat, when you're hooking up the depth finder to power, you want it so that it can turn off when you turn the boat off. So if you have a key, you turn the key and that powers on the boat. So you want the depth finder to be hooked up to an electrical source that is an on-off switch. In my case, I don't have that right now because I'm just relying on that one battery for power. So I'm going to connect it when I need it and disconnect it when I don't. Now that we have power to the system, the next step is to find a good location for that transducer. In my case, I'm probably going to glue it in because that's going to be the best way of having it stand still in the location that you want. The glues that you use can be removed later, so that's probably what I'll have to do. But in the meantime, I have to find a suitable location for this transducer. According to the instructions, the way to test the appropriate location for the transducer on a sailboat is to put it in a location where it's offset from the keel, because the keel is going to mess with the readings. So you find a location that's close to the keel, then you have to have either a bag full of water in which you put the transducer and then put it against a hole, or use petroleum jelly, or in my case, find a location where there's a bunch of bilge water. Well, what do you know? I got a whole lot of that. You look at here, what do we got? That looks like bilge water to me. So we've had so much rain that I pumped this out several times, but the bilge water is actually coming from the front of the boat in the chain locker. So the chain locker has a hole where it hasn't been plugged, and all the water drips down from there and then ends up in this portion of the bilge. What I've done is unwrap the cable so it's long enough to reach this location, and then ran it along the floor to where I am now. And the keel for us is located right here. These are the beams that are supposed to be supporting the beam or the keel, obviously in terrible condition. So the wire is running alongside and to the side. This is where I placed this transducer. It's sitting in bilge water. The reason you place the transducer in bilge water or a bag of water is because it carries a sound signature. Obviously, when it's glued, it's going to be mounted to the hull, so it can pick up on that sound signature when it's sending the sonar signal down to the bottom and coming back up for a reading. So now we're going to go ahead and plug the transducer into the gauge and see if we get a reading. It's just a matter of plugging this transducer wire into the bezel. Once that's done, if we take a look here, we have a reading. It's showing roughly 33 foot. However, what I've done here is actually set the keel. If you press the buttons, I have my keel set at 7 foot. It's 7'4", but actually this goes up only by 1 foot at a time. So 7 foot is gonna be my offset. And once that's done taking that reading, it's gonna come back up with the depth reading. So right now, my keel is roughly 33 foot away from the bottom of the bay. Making some progress on the installation. I'm quite happy about that. I found a good location where I can mount this transducer on this sailboat. And now that bilge water has to be pumped out. The reason it has to be pumped out is that the surface where the transducer is going to mount has to be sanded down and needs to be relatively smooth before you can apply any glue. Guys, it's day 2 of this project to install this depth finder on this boat. It's daytime, which is amazing because it's so much easier to work on this boat in the daytime when I have ambient light. I don't have to carry a headlamp and set up my standing light. So let's get this started. There's an old saying that carries a lot of wisdom, and that is that you should sleep on it. Having gotten some sleep from the previous night, this morning I thought about whether or not the location I picked for the transducer is the best location. This was my thought yesterday, was that the transducer should go in this cutout underneath what used to be the ice box. Problem with that being that it's a small tight fit, and then for me to get this sander in there, which is going to make my life difficult, does work. I can get it in there, but there's not going to be a lot of room to maneuver to get that surface to be where I need it to be in order to mount the transducer using glue. So here's what I'm thinking. So this area, again, this is if we look around the boat, this is the center of the boat where the engine lives. This area is large enough on the sides where I should theoretically be able to mount the transducer and have a lot of room to work with it. However, just like everything else in this boat, things being stacked everywhere, a couple steps behind where I need to be, this wood needs to be cut out before I can even go down there and test whether or not this is a good location for that transducer. Now that the wood is clear, there is a good amount of bilge water that came along with the rains, so that will have to be pumped out along with this bilge water. Again, I'm going to use this Milwaukee pack out vacuum. First, of course, here's a good reminder. If you're using a HEPA filter, you have to switch to a foam filter. I'll show you what that looks like before you can pump out liquids. So this is a foam filter, and what I have in there is a HEPA filter because I was cutting wood. So don't forget to switch the filters because the HEPA filters in these things do get clogged up relatively quickly once you start to use them on liquids. So after some dubious vacuuming, I was able to get about 33 gallons of water out of the bilge. That included the engine compartment and the compartment that's right below the mast. And surprisingly, this guy right here, this vacuum, was able to do that in one battery. That is fantastic. After that, this was scrubbed down. This now looks so much better. And my idea is, if we jump down here, So right here, there's a nice area that is relatively at an angle where the transducer wants to be at. So let's test this area after cleaning it and see if we can get a reading from the transducer in here. Last area I was able to test the transducer in because there was bilge water. In this case, I just cleaned out all the bilge water, and that area where I want to put the transducer or test the transducer doesn't have any bilge water. So I have to use the bag method in order to do the testing. So the bag method of testing the transducer involves filling a plastic bag with water, then placing the transducer into the bag. Once the transducer is in the bag, I want to put it in the location where I want to test it and see if the reading comes back the same as it did in the other location. We're going to go ahead and place this bag in this location, and then I have to face the transducer in the direction that it needs to be in, like so. Okay, and let's take a look at the reading. So we're at 4.5 foot. That is wrong. So I gotta adjust this. What I've done is take out some of the water inside of the bag. I actually filled it with too much water. It made it very hard to put the transducer in the location that I wanted without the water spilling out of the bag. So I've taken some of the water out, and now if we take a look, we are at 33 foot, just like we were yesterday. So I think this is a much better location for this transducer. Reason being, I have all of this space to run the wires. So again, where I'm trying to go is up top where I have my gauges. I can mount something there. So I think this area is going to be so much easier to run the wires in because there's already a ton of cutouts and there's plenty of wires in this area, which is so much better than having to run the wires through all of these nooks and crannies and around here. Now it's time to sand this area down. That needs to be a lot smoother than what it currently is, so I'm going to go ahead and use that orbital sander. I'm going to start with 80 grit and then sand this down, and we'll go from there. So this is what I'm going to use. It's an orbital sander. It is cordless. It runs on the same batteries as the rest of my tools. Only issue is I might have to remove this dust collection box because I'm not sure if it will fit in that tight space, but I'm going to go down there and sand it. I'm experiencing some technical difficulties with my sander. This thing's only about 7 months old, so it should be working just fine, but it is not. The battery is full, so this is a problem. I'm gonna have to go ahead and address this with either Milwaukee or Home Depot. So it should not be broken at this stage of its life. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take my multi-tool, I'm gonna take off this blade, and then I'm gonna attach the sander attachment to here. And I have some sandpaper with me that came with this tool when I bought it, and this is what I'm going to sand that with. Here we go. It's fully attached. Let's get some sanding done. Okay, this is the area I cleaned off. I sanded with my multi-tool. That's enough for me to put that transponder there. Transponder has also been cleaned, so I used some cleaner to clean this portion of the transponder because this is going to be getting glue. Guys, as far as the glue, the manufacturer had recommended they use a slow cure epoxy. So you can't use a 5-minute or 10-minute epoxy. You have to use a slow cure epoxy. This is what I'm going to be using. It's a 2-part epoxy. First, I have to mix it up. It gives me a working time of about 45 minutes, and it fully cures in about 24 hours. So let's go ahead and mix this up. Then I can apply it to that bottom of the transducer and place it in the location where it needs to go. The other benefit of working with a slow cure epoxy is that if I make a mistake, I have 45 minutes to correct it. And it should be sending a signal once this is applied to the transducer, and the transducer is placed in the location where it needs to go. I'm going to be using this red bowl to mix the epoxy, and I'm going to be using this spatula to mix the epoxy. The instructions say that this needs to be mixed for a 2-minute period of time. This is what it looks like when it comes out. Again, 2-part epoxy. So now it's just time to mix it up. this is what it looks like. Again, it's a pretty thick amount of this epoxy on this transducer. So now let's put it in place and see if it works. I'm gonna lower it in the spot where I want it to go, and then we're gonna do a couple of twisting motions to get the epoxy to sit flush. There we go. That is the location. So far, so good. We have a reading and everything's working as intended. This is day 3 of this install, and this needs to be put in. So there are some cutouts over here. I think that will fit in there. This is pretty easy. You just unscrew this holder, and then this portion comes out. Once we take the wires out of it, you'll be able to insert this through that hole, and then come back around, insert the wires back into this piece, and then tighten down the clamp, and that should be secured. There we go. Looks like a pretty good fit. This was a standard 2-inch hole, so naturally the previous owner had drilled some holes for his dials, and this one fit right in. Great. Now that I've fed through all of my wires and the mounting clamp has been installed, I'm going to go ahead and check to make sure the orientation is correct from the other side before I tighten this completely. So what I mean is to make sure that, yep, the dial is facing the right way. There we go. Now I can tighten that down. This being a temporary install, I'm going to run the wires behind this platform, and I don't think you guys have ever seen what's behind here, so I'm going to pop that open and then run the wire behind it. This door has finally been opened. I haven't moved this thing in a very long time, but here's what's behind it. A lot of wires, a lot of nightmare wires. No one knows what the hell's going on there. Some plumbing. This is the plumbing that goes to the shower, and some holes with a lot of feathers. So I'm going to clean these feathers up because obviously there's holes right here. I can feed the wires through there, and then that leads me directly to where the transducer is located. So let's clean this up first. Oh yeah, completely forgot to mention this. There's also this, I believe it's a 7-gallon diesel day tank. So I believe when I had my runaway issue with this engine, I think it was actually connected to this, and I just didn't know this tank was back here. I mean, it still seems like it might have some diesel in it, but when my engine was running and I couldn't stop it, I thought the lines were disconnected. I think they were actually connected to this day tank. All right, vacuumed all of this out. This looks so much better. Actually, it's starting to feel really good to slowly clean out all the dirty spots on this boat. It's kind of awesome, actually. So I know that's not totally clean, but that is so much better than what it used to be. Playing a little bit of Jenga here because obviously there's so much stuff. So the door that was over here is now over here. The wire is sitting here and needs to run underneath of there. So this door needs to close, then this latch needs to open and be held up by that ladder. Then I can feed the wire and then repeat the process backwards once that wire is through that hole. Jenga initiated. There we go. So this end needs to go with me, like such. Lift all the wires up. And I'm keeping this as a cluster because I need the length, but I don't want it to drop where it's dirty. So now I just gotta find the hole and thread this in. I think there might be 2 holes that was drilled, so I'm going to see if I can put it through the bottom holes and then possibly fish it out the top. Guys, if you're enjoying this video, please give me a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Thank you so much. Now it's time to check to see if I can find that wire through the other hole. So we're going backwards. Something stuck. I think this is the hole I gotta go fishing in. That's the hole I fed it in at the bottom. So I think I figured out if I open this up, right? So I should have just done that. Open this up, this hole should lead to here. I just have to find a hook and go fishing. No fishing needed. It's a small enough hole if you basically just point your finger, like you let it rest on your finger, and then basically right there. I'm even doing it one-handed. Look at that. One-handed wiring. Now it's just a matter of pulling this basically up to match that length. It's coming along pretty good because I have some tension on it, so it's not going too fast. So let's just run it up here. Got the right length. This is connected. I'm going to leave this with a little bit of slack and then go back through here and tidy up these wires. This is what I mean by tidy up. So crunch up the rest of the wires that are left, and I did leave a bunch of slack. So you can see I left a whole bunch of slack, and with these zip ties I can just take the screw out and take it back in. The reason I left so much slack is that when I go to pull this engine, I want this wire to be able to get out of the way. So I don't want to have to take out this wiring when I go to pull this engine, because obviously that's going to be at a boatyard, and I'm going to have to come back from the boatyard using my outboard. So again, I'm going to need a depth finder. So let's put this wire with enough slack so that I can remove this engine later on. Well, this is exciting. This is the first nautical instrument that works on this boat, electric wise. Quite amazing. There we go. It's in, it's working, and has the same readings as from before. So all 3 days match. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned.